The European Union will start enforcing new privacy laws in May. Are you ready for them? Do they even affect you? And will they change the way we do our data-driven marketing? Let's find out. Hey there and welcome back to another video of MeasureSchool.com teaching you the data-driven way of digital marketing. My name is Julian, and by now you probably heard of the new data protection rules of the European Union, also known as GDPR. They reform the way we gather, store and process personal data, like about your customers, or how we can use this data for marketing purposes. Now you're probably just like me, and privacy and the law are not your strong suit, so I wanted to break these new regulations down for you, and I've gotten some help on this video from James Chiodo, who is a privacy professional, and he helped me put all the information together, answered a lot of my questions, and overall really helped me to put this video together. And you can find more out about him on disclaimertemplate.com, where he also helps especially website owners or app owners to get ready for these new regulations. Now I know you got tons of questions, but let's get into the most important ones first and then take it from there. First up, what exactly is GDPR? Well, the General Data and Privacy Protection Regulations are new sets of rules that are laid out by the European Commission to protect personal data of European citizens. It is really the biggest reform of privacy law we have seen since the inception of the internet. The last times they were really revised were 20 years ago. So obviously there has been a lot of changes over the years in terms of the technology and the capabilities that we now have to use personal information. Just think about remarketing or email marketing or marketing automation. We as marketers use this personal data that can be connected to an actual person every day. And that's really what the European Commission wants to protect and really clear up from a responsibility stand. Now it's important to understand that the GDPR is not a clear-cut do or don't list. It's more of a framework on that written down in a very legal jargon, which still needs to be interpreted by the parties involved and also probably by the courts later on in lawsuits that will come of it if one or the other company is violating these rules. But just as a little scare, it is important to know that these rules will start to be enforced by the end of May. So do these regulations apply to you? Well, most likely the answer is yes. If you have a mobile website or an app that is accessible to Europeans, or you have European customers, you will most likely need to comply with the new GDPR rules. Now you might ask yourself, why? My business is not based in Europe. They can't enforce that in my country, so why should I care about this? But remember, these rules don't just affect small website or small business owners, they also affect businesses that process and store personal data on your behalf. And companies like Amazon, Facebook or Google do have subsidiaries in European countries, so they might very well be penalized and susceptible to these new fines. So as these companies want to play by the rules, they will hand down and pass down some of these regulations probably to you, because they also need to make sure that you are handling this data responsibly. And you've probably already received emails from Facebook or AdWords on how they are changing their systems and making sure they comply with the GDPR. So only if you are really shielded off from all European customers, I really think that you should start thinking about how you can prepare for the upcoming changes in GDPR. And it's also important to note that Europe has traditionally been a strong role model for wider effects of privacy laws and regulations. So if you comply with them, you will be on the safe side really and future-proof. So what changes with GDPR? So without getting too much into the nitty-gritty of the exact rules, I would sum it out in one word, and this is about responsibility. Previously, it was never really clear who was responsible for personal data that was held and processed by companies. And therefore, nobody really felt accountable in recent terms for violating anything in privacy laws. And just think about like the scandal that is now happening with Cambridge Analytica or Facebook. Who's really responsible here and what do they need to change? With the GDPR, this clearly now is a responsibility and this is shifted towards the companies that hold and process that data. Now with that, the ones who are giving up the data, you and me signing up for a service, for example, we get certain rights, and these really empower us to have more transparency in the company and ask the company for our private information, how it's being used. This goes from how the data is actually gathered over the processing of the data and then storing the information. Now, as an example, commonly you ask users to give up personal information on forms on your website. That might be because you want them to sign up to your newsletter or order a product from you. Even before he clicks that sign up button, you need to inform him of why you are using that information and how you are planning to process it and use it later on. Then you need to get explicit permission, also called consent, to save, use and process that data going forward. And then once the user clicks on that sign up button and he agrees to your terms, then you probably are not saving it somewhere in your computer, but rather on a service. And there's also where you probably give the data to process that data and do further marketing with it. Now, it's important to understand that you also carry the responsibility for those services to be using that personal data on your behalf. So you need to make sure they also are complying with the rules and regulations of that data. And that's all important because at any time your users should be able to ask you for that information. What do you have on them? How is it being used? How it's being processed? And potentially also that it should be changed, exported or deleted. So there are quite a few processes that would be implemented into a company in order to comply with these regulations when somebody sends an email and wants to have all the data that you have on them. Now, this obviously probably brings in more questions for you and how you can specifically put this into place in your business and become GDPR compliant. Unfortunately, like I said at the beginning, GDPR is not a clear-cut do or don't rule list that you can just apply. It really depends on your business, how big you are, what data you gather, how you process that data, and a host of other factors to become GDPR compliant. So in our next video on GDPR, I will let you know the specific steps that I actually took in order to become GDPR compliant with my website and the things that you might need to take care of if you want to make this change for yourself and be up to date with the newest rules and regulations. So stay tuned to see that video. Now, thanks again to James Chiodo who helped me out putting this video together, and you can check out more information about GDPR on his website at disclaimertemplate.com. I will link up his website down below as well. And if you have any more questions, please leave them in the comments below because I will try to answer them in our next video. And if you haven't yet, then consider subscribing right over there because we'll bring you new videos just like this one every week. Now, my name is Julian. See you in the next one.